Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start tonight with a question. And I need you to take it seriously. I need you to let it land, not just pass through you like something you've heard before. When was the last time you waited for someone to save you, not rescue you from a burning building, not pull you from water? I mean the other kind of waiting, the quiet kind, the kind you do at your kitchen table at midnight when the bills are stacked and the plan isn't working, and you're sitting there somewhere deep in the back of your mind, waiting for a phone to ring, waiting for someone to show up, waiting for the universe or God or luck or the right person or the right moment to walk through your door and hand you the life you know you deserve. I know what that waiting feels like. I have done it. And I am standing here tonight to tell you something that is going to feel, at first, like the hardest thing you've ever heard. And then, if you stay with me, it is going to feel like the most liberating thing anyone has ever said to you. Nobody is coming to save you. Let me say it again. Because I needed to move through you, not around you. Nobody is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your government, not the mentor you've been hoping will discover you, not the investor who's going to believe in your idea, not the partner who's going to love you into wholeness, not the job that's going to finally make you feel worthy, not the moment somewhere in the future when circumstances finally line up and life becomes what you always imagined it should be. Nobody is coming. And the moment, the precise, sacred, terrifying, extraordinary moment that you truly accept that is the moment your real life begins. I know that sounds brutal. I know it sounds cold. And I understand if your first instinct is to push back, to say, that's not true. People help each other. Community matters. Love is real. And you're right. All of that is true. People do help each other. Community does matter. Love is real, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human existence. But there is a difference between receiving help and waiting to be saved. There is a difference between accepting love and using love as a reason to stop growing. There is a difference between community lifting you up and community becoming the excuse you use to stay exactly where you are. Help is real. Salvation, the kind where someone else does the work of your life for you, where someone else carries the weight that belongs to you, where someone else becomes responsible for the person you're supposed to become. That salvation does not exist. And the belief that it does, the silent, comfortable, paralyzing belief that it does, is the most dangerous thing in your life right now. More dangerous than your circumstances. More dangerous than your past. More dangerous than your past. More dangerous than any external obstacle you're facing. The waiting is what's killing you. And tonight we end the waiting. I grew up watching someone wait. My uncle, my mother's brother, a man I loved completely, a man who was brilliant and funny, and the kind of person who could walk into a room and change the temperature of it just by being there. My uncle spent 40 years waiting to be saved, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that anyone around him would have identified as waiting. He had a job, he had a family, he had a routine. From the outside, he looked like a man living a life. But I watched him closely, the way children watch the adults they love, and I saw it. The way he would talk about what he would do when things changed. The way he would describe his gifts. And he had extraordinary gifts, always in the future tense, always contingent on something else happening first. He was waiting for his boss to recognize him. He was waiting for the economy to improve. He was waiting for his kids to get older so he'd have more time. He was waiting for his wife to be more supportive. He was waiting for the moment when life would, of its own accord, create the conditions he needed to finally become himself. He died at 63. And at his funeral, standing in front of the people who loved him, looking at a room full of people who had no idea what he was actually capable of because he had kept it locked up inside a life of waiting, I felt something that I have never fully shaken. I felt the specific grief of unrealized potential, not the grief of someone who tried and failed. The grief of someone who never fully tried. Someone who stayed at the edge of the water their whole life, waiting for someone to carry them across and never discovered that they could swim, but they could swim. That grief is different. I don't want anyone to feel it at your funeral. I don't want you to feel it at the end of your own life, looking back at the years and seeing all the moments when you were waiting, when you could have been moving, when you were hoping, when you could have been building. When you were looking for someone else to give you permission to be who you already were. Don't make them grieve the version of you that never got out. Let me tell you about a psychological concept that I think is at the root of all of this. It's called the locus of control, and it was developed by a psychologist named Julian Rotter in the 1950s. The idea is this: some people believe that the events of their life are primarily controlled by external forces. Luck, other people, the system, fate. Other people believe that they themselves are the primary source of control in their lives. Rotter called these external and internal locus of control, and decades of research since then have shown something remarkable. People with an internal locus of control, people who genuinely believe that their choices and actions are the primary driver of their outcomes, those people are consistently healthier, more successful, more resilient, and more satisfied with their lives than people who believe their lives are controlled by outside forces. Across cultures, across demographics, across economic circumstances, the belief that you are the author of your life, rather than the recipient of what life decides to give you, is one of the strongest predictors of human flourishing that psychology has ever identified. This isn't about denying that systems are real. Systems are real. Privilege is real. Some people start with more and some people start with less, and that is a fact that matters and that should matter to how we build society. I'm not standing here telling you that circumstances don't affect outcomes. They do. But I'm telling you this: inside whatever circumstances you were handed, there is a range of possible lives. There is the life of someone who waited inside those circumstances, and the life of someone who moved inside those circumstances. And the difference between those two lives is not luck. It is not privilege. It is the decision, fierce, daily, non negotiable, to locate the source of your power inside yourself rather than waiting for the outside world to hand it to you. That decision is available to everyone in this room. Come to this room right now, tonight, not when conditions improve, not when someone gives you permission. Now, I want to tell you about a woman I'll call Rosa. Rosa grew up in poverty, and I don't mean the kind of poverty that's uncomfortable. I mean the kind that is a daily emergency. The kind where you go to sleep wondering if there will be food tomorrow. The kind where the house is cold because the heat has been turned off and the landlord isn't answering. The kind where you learn very early that the world is not set up for people like you, and that the systems that are supposed to protect people are often the same systems that are grinding people down. Rosa had every reason, every structural, systemic, legitimate reason to wait. To say the deck is stacked, the game is rigged. Someone needs to come and fix this before I can move. And nobody in that room would have been able to argue with her, because she was right. The deck was stacked. The game was, in many real ways, rigged. But Rosa didn't wait. Not because she was naive about the system. Not because she pretended the obstacles weren't real. But because at the age of 19, sitting in a room with no heat in the middle of winter, she had a thought that changed everything. She told me about this thought years later, sitting across from me in a conference room on the 40th floor of a building she owned. She said, I realized that nobody was coming. And I realized that if nobody was coming, then the only question left was what I was going to do about it. Not what the system was going to do. Not what anyone else was going to do. Me, what was I going to do? She started with one class at a community college. She worked 2 jobs to pay for it. She made mistakes. She's honest about this. She made real consequential mistakes. She had setbacks that would have stopped most people. She went backward before she went forward more than once, but she never went back to waiting. She had made a decision in a cold room at 19 years old that the waiting was over, and she held that decision through everything that came after. Today, Rosa employs over 200 people in the community she grew up in. She didn't just save herself. She became, for the people around her, living proof that the power was there all along, that it didn't require rescue, that it required decision. But let me be very careful here, because I don't want to give you the motivational movie version of Rosa's story and leave out the part that matters most. The part that most motivational stories skip because it's not comfortable. Rosa suffered. The path from that cold room to the 40th floor was not a montage. It was not a series of increasingly triumphant moments set to an inspiring soundtrack. It was years of exhaustion and doubt and loneliness and sacrifice and failure. It was relationships that didn't survive the ambition. It was sleep she didn't get. It was moments of genuine despair where the voice inside her said, maybe you were wrong. Maybe you can't. Maybe waiting was actually the safer choice. And she chose, in those moments, to keep going anyway. Not because it was easy, not because she was always sure, but because she had decided something and the decision was more durable than the feeling. That's the part I need you to hear. When I say nobody is coming to save you, I am not saying the path forward is easy. I am not saying that if you just believe hard enough and work hard enough, everything will work out exactly as you pictured. Some things will not work out as you pictured. Some losses are real. Some roads are genuinely harder for some people than for others, and pretending otherwise is dishonest. What I'm saying is that whatever the road is, you are the one who has to walk it. And you can walk it waiting for rescue, looking over your shoulder, hoping someone will catch up and take the weight. Or you can walk it fully, with everything you have, as the primary agent of your own life. Those are genuinely different journeys. Same road, different experiences, different outcomes, and only one of them leads somewhere you want to be. Let me talk about responsibility, because that's really what we're talking about. And I don't want to dress it up in softer language. Taking radical, complete, unflinching responsibility for your life is the hardest thing a human being can do. It is harder than any physical challenge, harder than any external obstacle. Because it requires you to give up something that feels very much like comfort, very much like safety, very much like being loved. It requires you to give up the story. You know what story I mean. We all have one. The story about why we are not where we want to be, and why that's not entirely our fault. The story involves other people's circumstances, timing, the hand we were dealt. And the thing about these stories, the most insidious thing, is that they are almost always at least partially true. The people in them really did do what you said they did. The circumstances really were difficult. The timing really was bad. The hand really was hard. But here is the question I want to ask you about your story. Is it serving you? Not is it accurate? Not is it fair? Not do you deserve sympathy for what happened to you. You may absolutely deserve sympathy. What happened to you may have been genuinely unjust. I'm not challenging the facts. I'm challenging the function. Is the story serving you? Is holding on to it, rehearsing it, leading with it, using it to explain your current position? Is that making your life better? Is it moving you forward? Is it helping you build anything? Is it connecting you to your own power? Or is it the comfortable, socially acceptable, completely understandable reason you've been giving yourself for staying exactly where you are? Because here's what I know about stories. The stories we tell ourselves about why we can't are precisely as powerful as the stories we tell ourselves about why we can. And we get to choose which story we're in, not the facts. The facts are what they are. But the meaning we attach to the facts, the narrative we build around them, the role we assign ourselves in our own life story, that is a choice. That is always a choice. And most people have made that choice unconsciously. They absorb the story from their environment, from the people around them, from the experiences they had. And they started running it like a program without ever stopping to ask, did I write this? Do I believe this? Is it actually true about me? Or did I just inherit it? Tonight, I want to ask you to stop and look at the program you're running. What is the story you're telling yourself about why your dream is still a dream and not a reality? What is the story you're telling yourself about why you haven't made the call, started the project, had the conversation, taken the step? What is the story you're telling yourself about what you're capable of and what you're not? Where did that story come from? Who wrote it? And is it time right now, tonight, to write a new one? I want to tell you about a man named James. James was an athlete in his 20s, a serious athlete, someone who had devoted his life to his sport from childhood, someone for whom the sport was not just a career aspiration, but an identity. And at 24 years old, James suffered an injury that ended his athletic career. Not temporarily, permanently. And in the years that followed, James built a story. It was a story he didn't write consciously. It just accumulated the way sediment accumulates at the bottom of a river. The story said, you had your chance and it was taken from you. The story said, everything you were good at, everything you built yourself around was destroyed before you got to show the world who you really were. The story said you deserved more and you got less, and that fundamental injustice is the defining fact of your life. And James lived inside that story for almost a decade. He was angry, quietly but constantly. He drank more than was good for him. He started things and abandoned them. He kept himself in a state of low-grade suspended animation, present in his life but not really inhabiting it, because somewhere in his mind he was still standing at the moment of the injury, still waiting for someone to come and give him back what was taken. Nobody gave it back, because nobody could. It was gone. That chapter was closed. And at 33 years old, James met someone who asked him a question. A simple question asked without any great therapeutic intention, just in the course of a conversation. Just in the course of a conversation. The question was, what do you love about yourself that has nothing to do with the sport? James told me he didn't have an answer. Not because the answer didn't exist, but because he had never asked the question. He had been so deep inside the story of what was lost that he had never gone looking for what remained. He sat with that question for weeks. And what he found when he really looked was extraordinary. He found that the qualities that made him a great athlete, the discipline, the capacity for pain, the ability to focus, the instinct for strategy, the leadership in high pressure moments, none of those lived in his body alone. They lived in him. In the mind and character that the sport had shaped, but that the sport hadn't created. They were there before the sport and they were there after the injury. And they were there during the decade of waiting and they would be there for the rest of his life. Nobody had taken those. He had just stopped looking for them because he was so busy waiting for someone to return what was lost. James went back to school at 33. He became a coach, not just of physical technique, but of the mental and emotional dimensions of performance. Today he works with young athletes who are facing the exact crisis he faced, the loss of the identity they've built around a sport, and he helps them find the question he couldn't find for himself for a decade. What do you love about yourself that has nothing to do with the thing you're afraid of losing? Because everything you love about yourself that doesn't depend on external circumstances, that's yours. Hers, permanently, unconditionally. No injury can take it. No recession can take it. No failure, no rejection, no loss can take it. It exists inside the decision you make about who you are. And as long as you make that decision, it's yours. But nobody was going to bring James to that question. Nobody was going to rescue him into it. He had to arrive there himself. And the arrival took the form of a small, genuine conversation with someone who cared enough to ask something real. You'll have those conversations, people will offer them to you, sometimes without knowing it. Moments that contain doorways, questions that have the capacity to change your entire direction. But you have to be present enough, awake enough, no longer waiting enough to walk through them. Stop waiting. Walk through. I want to talk about the seduction of almost. Almost is the most comfortable place in the world to live. Almost is not failure. Almost is not quitting. Almost is still in the game, still in the running, still maintaining the identity of someone who is trying. Almost lets you keep telling the story while avoiding the risk of finding out whether the story is true. Almost is where dreams go to sleep. You know what almost looks like. Almost is the business plan that's been written and revised and perfected for 3 years, but never submitted because it's not quite ready yet. Almost is the book that exists in detailed notes and half-finished chapters that you return to occasionally, but never finish because the time isn't quite right. Almost is the conversation you've had in your head 100 times, but never out loud because the moment hasn't felt quite right. Almost is the application you've filled out and not sent, the call you've drafted and not made, the step you've lifted your foot to take and then set back down. Almost is extraordinarily seductive because it preserves optionality. As long as you haven't fully committed, you haven't fully failed. As long as the dream is almost happening, it's still happening. Almost lets you live in the warm space between fantasy and reality, where nothing is tested and nothing is lost and everything is still possible. But here is the cost of almost. The cost of almost. The cost is your life, not metaphorically, literally. Every day you spend in almost is a day you don't spend in the life that's waiting for you on the other side of the decision. And days add up to weeks, and weeks to years, and years to a lifetime. And at the end of the lifetime, you look back and all you see is almost. All you see is the person you were almost brave enough to become. I don't want that for you. I don't think you want that for yourself. So I'm going to ask you directly, rightly, right now in front of everyone in this room, what is your almost? What is the thing that has been almost happening for too long? What is the step you have been almost taking? What is the version of yourself that you have been almost becoming? name it. Not out loud if you don't want to. But inside right now, name it. Good. Hold it there. Now I want to tell you something about that thing. It is not waiting for you to be ribiri. It is not waiting for conditions to improve. It is not waiting for someone to give you permission or resources or a clear sign that now is the moment. It has been waiting for you to stop waiting. That's all. That is literally all that stands between you and that thing. The decision to stop standing at the edge and step forward. Readiness is a myth. I know we talk about readiness like it's something you achieve through sufficient preparation. Like there is a checklist. And when you complete all the items on the checklist, a bell goes off and you are officially ready. And now you can begin. But no one who has ever done anything significant has ever told me they felt ready when they started. Not one. They felt scared and uncertain and underprepared. And they did it anyway. Because waiting to feel ready is another form of waiting for someone to save you. You're waiting for some future version of yourself to arrive and take over. Some version who is more capable and more confident and more prepared. And that version is never coming. The version is never coming. The version you're waiting for is built by doing, not by waiting. You become the ready version by showing up as the unready version again and again. Until the gap between them closes, you are not going to feel ready. Go anyway. Let me talk about the voices. Because when I say nobody is coming to save you, one of the voices in the room right now is saying, he doesn't understand my situation. Another voice is saying, it's easy to say that if you haven't been through what I've been through, Another voice is saying, this sounds like the kind of thing someone says who has never really struggled. I hear those voices. I respect them. And I want to speak directly to them. You're right that I don't know your specific situation. Every person in this room carries a weight I can't fully see. Every story has dimensions I don't have access to. Every struggle is more complicated on the inside than it looks from the outside. And I would be arrogant and dishonest if I pretended otherwise. But here's what I know about those voices. Those voices, the you don't understand, the it's different for me, the you don't know what I've been through voices. Those voices, however valid their raw material, are functioning as defenders of the waiting. They are the guardians of the story. And their job, whatever their intentions, is to keep you exactly where you are. They're not wrong that your struggle is real. They're wrong that the struggle disqualifies you from moving. They're wrong that the difficulty of your circumstances justifies a life spent waiting for someone to change them. I want to tell you about Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, during World War II. He lost his wife, his parents, his brother. He was subjected to conditions of deliberate dehumanization that were designed systematically to strip every human being inside them of any sense of meaning, agency, or power. And inside those conditions, inside the most extreme external destruction of human autonomy that the modern world has produced, Viktor Frankl made a discovery that became the foundation of a whole school of psychology and a book that has sold millions of copies and changed millions of lives. He discovered that the last human freedom, the one freedom that no external force can take, is the freedom to choose your own response to your circumstances. Not the freedom to change your circumstances. Not the freedom to be free of suffering, but the freedom to decide, inside whatever is happening to you, what meaning you will attach to it, what you will think about it, what you will do with it, what you will become because of it. He called it the last human freedom, and he observed it not just in himself, but in others around him. People who, in the middle of circumstances that should have destroyed every human faculty, found within themselves a source of meaning and agency that the camps could not reach. If Viktor Frankl could locate the power of decision inside a concentration camp, you can locate it inside your circumstances. I say that not to minimize what you're going through. I say it because I refuse to participate in the idea that your circumstances are so powerful, so total, so all-consuming that they have removed your agency. Because the moment I accept that, I have joined the chorus of voices that are keeping you where you are. And I care too much about your life to do that. Your circumstances are real. Your agency is also real. Both things are true at the same time. And the one you choose to lead with determines everything. Lead with agency, choose your response. Make the decision. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to save you. And that is the greatest gift you will ever receive. Because here is what happens when you stop waiting. When you truly, completely, in the most honest part of yourself, stop waiting for rescue. Something shifts. Something that was passive becomes active, becomes active. Something that was facing outward, scanning the horizon for help, turns inward and finds what was there the whole time. You find capacity you didn't know you had. Not because it wasn't there before, but because as long as you were waiting for someone to carry you, you never had to use it. Like a muscle that's never been asked to lift anything, it was present but dormant. When the waiting ends, a muscle engages. And the first time you engage it, it's weak. And it builds. It always builds if you keep using it. I want to tell you about what I call the three rooms. The first room is the room of blame. In this room, you have located the source of your life's problems outside of yourself. The people who wronged you are in this room. The system that failed you, the circumstances that were unfair, the luck that never came, and you're right about most of it. The blame in this room is often justified. But in this room, you have no power, because the power to change your life lives with the people and circumstances you've put in charge of it. You can be completely right and completely powerless at the same time. That's what this room produces. The second room is the room of shame. This is where people go when they've been told, or when they've told themselves that the blame belongs to them, where it's not the system that failed, it's you that failed. You made bad choices, you wasted time, you hurt people, you didn't try hard enough. You're too much of this or not enough of that. And in this room, you also have no power. Because shame is not the same as responsibility. Shame says you are bad. Responsibility says you made choices and you can make different ones. Shame is a prison. Responsibility is a door. And this room doesn't have a door, only a mirror that makes everything look worse than it is. The third room is the room of responsibility. Not comfortable responsibility. Not the tidy kind of responsibility that looks like mature self-awareness. The raw, difficult, sometimes humbling, sometimes terrifying kind. The kind that says, whatever happened, I am now the person who decides what comes next. The kind that says, I don't need to deny the injustice to claim my agency. The kind that says, the waiting is over, not because everything is fair, but because waiting is costing me my life. In this third room, the power lives. All of it, everything you've been hoping someone else would bring you, it's in this room. And the door to it has only ever had one key, and that key is the decision to walk through it. Most people spend their whole lives between the first and second rooms, moving back and forth between blame and shame like a pendulum. The third room is always there. The door is always open. You just have to decide to walk through it. Let me talk about the people you've been waiting for specifically. You've been waiting for your parents to finally see you, to finally say the thing they've never said, to give the approval that somehow never came in the form you needed it. To acknowledge the hurt, the gap, the way the limitations shaped yours. Maybe you've been waiting for that for 30 years, maybe longer. I want to say this as gently as I can because this is real pain and it deserves respect. They may never say it, not because you don't deserve it. You may deserve it completely, but because they are human beings with their own limitations, their own unhealed wounds, their own rooms, they're trapped in. And waiting for them to heal themselves enough to give you what you need is not a plan. It's hope that's costing you your life. You can hold love for them and let go of the waiting at the same time. You can forgive for your sake, not theirs, without requiring an apology that may never come. You can grieve what you didn't get and choose to give yourself, as an adult, some version of what you needed as a child. You can stop making your internal permission to become yourself contingent on an external event that someone else controls. Give yourself the permission. Right now, it's yours to give. It has always been yours to give. And you've been waiting for the right partner to complete you. For the love that finally makes you feel whole. And I understand this. Love is one of the deepest human needs, and the longing for it is not weakness, it is beauty. But if you're waiting to begin your real life until someone loves you into starting it, you are asking love to do something it cannot do. You are asking another incomplete human being to complete you, and no person can do that. No person should have to carry that weight. And the love you're waiting for, if it comes while you're waiting for it to make you whole, will collapse under the weight of what you're asking it to carry. Become yourself first. Build a life first. Not because love is less important, but because the love that meets you when you're already becoming yourself will be a completely different quality of love than the love that meets you in the waiting room of your own life. You're not incomplete. You never were. You just accepted someone else's evaluation. And you've been waiting for the right time, for the kids to be older, for the mortgage to be paid down, for the market to stabilize, for January, for Monday, for after the holidays, for when things slow down, for when things slow down, for when things speed up, for when the conditions are better. The conditions are never going to be perfect. This is not pessimism. This is physics. There will always be a reason to wait if you are looking for one. Life does not reach a state of perfect readiness for you to begin. Life is happening right now in all its imperfect, complicated, demanding, not quite right form. And the life you want is not on the other side of better conditions. It's on the other side of the decision to begin inside the conditions you actually have. Begin inside the conditions you actually have. I want to tell you about a specific kind of waiting that I think is the most subtle and the most destructive. I call it waiting for proof. Waiting for proof looks like this. You have a dream, a vision, a deep, persistent, specific sense of what you're capable of and who you could become. And you won't fully commit to it until you have proof that it's possible. You want to see someone who started where you started and got to where you want to go. You want to go. You want data that supports the bet you want to make on yourself. You want external validation, a mentor's endorsement, an early success, something visible, before you pour yourself in completely. I understand the logic. It feels sensible. It feels like due diligence. But here's the problem. The proof only comes after the commitment. You cannot get proof of your own capacity without testing your own capacity. The evidence you're looking for about what's possible for you is generated by your willingness to try, not by anything that exists before the try. You cannot research your way to certainty about something that only becomes certain through action. You cannot find in the world outside yourself the evidence that exists only in the world inside yourself. The commitment comes before the proof. Always. In every story of human achievement, the commitment came before the proof. The evidence followed the belief. The result followed the risk. The result followed the risk. The validation followed the vulnerability. You have to bet on yourself before the bet is confirmed. That's what a bet is. That's the nature of faith. Whether it's spiritual faith or the secular faith of someone who decides to fully commit to a vision before the vision has materialized. You have been waiting for evidence to give yourself permission to believe. Believe first. Let me talk about what happens to people who stop waiting. It isn't a dramatic transformation. It isn't a sudden, effortless glide towards success. I want to be honest with you about this because false promises are a form of disrespect, and I respect you too much for that. What happens when you stop waiting is this. You start learning. Because the person who is waiting for rescue is, by definition, not learning. They are not gathering information about what works and what doesn't, about where their real strengths lie, about how to navigate the specific obstacles of their specific path. They are standing still, hoping the path will come to them. The person who stops waiting, starts moving. And moving, even in the wrong direction, generates information. It generates feedback. It generates a specific kind of knowledge that can only come from experience. The knowledge of what it's actually like to try, to adjust, to try again. This is the knowledge that builds capability. This is the knowledge that turns potential into power. You have potential. I don't know what you've done with your life up until tonight, but I am certain of this. You have potential. Every human being has potential. That's not a nice thing to say. It's a fact. The question has never been whether the potential exists. The question has always been whether you are willing to develop it into something real. Through the process of moving and failing and learning and moving again. That process belongs to you. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can rescue you into it. I know that you can because I have watched human beings do it over and over again. In circumstances that were harder than anything most of us in this room have faced. I have watched people build extraordinary lives out of materials so scarce and conditions so difficult that the very idea that they could do what they did defies easy explanation. The capacity is there in you right now. Not in a future version of you, not in a better resourced version, not in a version that has finally received the validation they deserve. In you, tonight, as you are, and the activation code for that capacity is 4 words. Nobody is coming. Move. I want to talk about the people around you. Because when you make the decision to stop waiting and start moving, something interesting happens in your environment. Some of the people around you will be inspired. They'll see something in you shift and it will wake something up in them. They'll want to know what changed. They'll start asking questions that have the quality of someone considering a similar decision. Your movement will create permission for their movement. And those relationships will deepen and strengthen and take on a kind of energy that they didn't have when you were both waiting together. But some of the people around you won't respond that way. Some of them will be unsettled by your decision to move. Because your movement makes their waiting visible. Your commitment makes their hesitation visible. Your growth creates a kind of mirror that some people are not ready to look into. And rather than looking into it, they will push back. They will question your decisions. They will remind you of your past failures. They will subtly or not so subtly suggest that you're getting too big for where you came from, that you're setting yourself up for disappointment, that the sensible thing is to stay where you are. And I want you to love those people. I want you to genuinely love them, because most of them are pushing back out of their own fear, not out of malice toward you. They are projecting their own sense of limitation onto you, because your decision to challenge your limitations is implicitly challenging theirs. Love them and keep moving. Because staying small to make other people comfortable with their own smallness is the kind of sacrifice that sounds like loyalty and functions like self-destruction. For real loyalty to the people you love looks like becoming everything you're capable of and then using what you've built to create more room for them, more possibility for them, more proof for them that the capacity exists. Your success is not abandonment, it's invitation. Let me talk about one more person who's been waiting. The person I haven't named yet. You have been waiting. Maybe you know exactly what you've been waiting for. Maybe it's been so long and the waiting has been so woven into your daily life that you've stopped noticing it and it just feels like normal life. But somewhere in you, and you know this because you're here, because something brought you to this moment, because some part of you is always looking for the thing that gives it permission to stop waiting. Somewhere in you, you know what you haven't done yet. You know what you've been almost doing. You know the version of yourself that's been knocking on the inside of your life, trying to get out. You know the dream that is not actually dead, but just deeply patient. You know the call you haven't made, and the step you haven't taken, and the conversation you haven't had, and the commitment you haven't made. And you've been waiting. Tonight, in this room, in this moment, I want to offer you something, not rescue. I told you nobody is coming to save you, and I meant it. And that includes me. I'm not your savior. I'm your mirror. I'm just someone standing in front of you saying, I see it. I see the energy in you. I see the capacity. I see the dream that won't quite die, even when you've tried to let it go. I see the person you keep almost being. And I'm asking you with everything I have to let that person out. Not tomorrow. Not after. Now. The decision doesn't require resources. It doesn't require perfect circumstances. It doesn't require anyone's permission. It doesn't require that the fear goes away. The fear may never fully go away. And that's fine. You can be afraid and move at the same time. Fear and action are not mutually exclusive. In fact, the most courageous actions in human history have been performed by people who were afraid. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something matters more than the fear. What matters more than your fear? Whatever your answer is to that question, that's the direction you move in. Starting tonight, starting now, starting with one step, one call, one conversation, one page written, one application submitted, one honest look in the mirror where you say out loud, without flinching, I am the one. I am the one who is going to do this. I am the one who is going to build this life. I am the one who is going to become this person. Nobody is coming. And that means I am all I need. Because you are. You are all you need. Not in a way that means you don't need community, connection, love, support. You do. We all do. But those things are available to the person who is moving toward them, building toward them, creating the life that naturally generates them. They are not available to the person who is sitting very still, waiting for them to arrive. Move toward what you need. Build what you need. Become the kind of person that what you need can find. I want to end with something that I have been thinking about for a long time. We live in a world that is full of people waiting for their circumstances to change, waiting for someone to give them permission, waiting for the culture to shift, waiting for the system to improve, waiting for the moment when things are finally fair enough, finally clear enough, finally safe enough to begin. And in the middle of all that waiting, there have always been people who decided not to wait. Not because they were special, not because they were born with something the rest of us don't have, but because at some moment, in some room facing some version of the hard truth, nobody is coming. They made a different choice. Those people changed things, not always in ways history recorded, often in ways that were invisible and local and quiet. A child raised differently, a neighborhood transformed incrementally, a community that found in one person's decision to move the permission to make their own decisions. A life that became proof that the capacity was always there, that the limits were never as total as they looked, that the waiting was always optional. You can be one of those people. Right now, tonight. Not after you feel ready, not after you get the validation, not after someone arrives and tells you that you have what it takes. You are the someone. You are the arrival. You are the rescue you've been waiting for. And it's time. I need you to look at the person next to you right now. Just look at them. Look at someone in this room who is sitting where you're sitting, feeling something similar to what you're feeling, carrying their own version of the weight you carry, holding their own version of the dream you hold. Look at them and understand something. They are not your competition. They are your company. They are the proof that you are not alone in this room, not alone in this decision, not alone in the transition from waiting to moving. Every person in this building is at some version of the same crossroads, and the decision any one of you makes tonight ripples outward into the lives around you in ways you will never be able to fully track. Your decision matters beyond you. The version of you that chooses to stop waiting and start moving matters to people you haven't met yet. It matters to your children and your children's children. It matters to the community that needs what you specifically have to offer. It matters to the person who is going to see you and think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Your life is not just your life. Your decision is not just your decision. And that means the stakes are even higher than you thought. Not just your happiness, not just your fulfillment. But the example you set, the permission you grant, the proof you provide that human beings are not helpless in the face of their circumstances, that is the gift you give to everyone who is watching. And people are always watching, not in a paranoid way, in a human way. We watch each other. We take our cues from each other. We find our courage in each other's examples. And the courage you demonstrate by stepping out of the waiting and into the moving, that courage is contagious. Give it to the people around you. Give it by living it. Give it by living. Give it by making the decision tonight and then getting up tomorrow morning and making it again. And again the day after. And every day after that. For the rest of a life that was always yours to build. Because nobody is coming to save you. And that is not a tragedy. That is the truth that sets you free. You are the one. You have always been the one. And the moment you stop waiting for someone else to confirm that, the moment you stop needing external permission to live the life that is authentically, completely, urgently yours, that moment right there is the beginning of everything. That moment is now. Stop waiting. Start moving. The life you've been hoping someone would hand you is the life you're going to build yourself. And when you've built it, not perfectly, not without struggle, not without failure, not without the long lags between effort and result, but fully, truly, with everything you have, when you've built it and you look back at this night, at this moment, at the person you were sitting in this chair, holding this breath, you are going to know with complete certainty that this was the turning point. This was the night you stopped waiting. This was the night you became your own rescue. This was the night you finally, fully, courageously arrived. Now go build a life. Nobody is coming, and you don't need them to. Thank you.